Hey everyone, it's Olivia. And oh my goodness, do I have a story for you today. It's one of those moments where you just have to laugh at yourself, you know? It's all about how I completely overthought a simple text message for a solid 10 minutes. Can you even imagine? It was just a quick reply I needed to send, something super casual, but my brain decided to turn it into this whole dramatic production. I was agonizing over every single word, rephrasing it a million times, wondering if it sounded too eager or too nonchalant. Honestly, it felt like I was writing a novel instead of a two-word reply. My heart was actually racing a little bit. It was ridiculous. You will not believe the mental gymnastics I was doing. I'm so excited to share this with you because I know you've probably been there too. It's so relatable, right? So, let's begin our exciting journey of English improvement together. And remember, new videos are released daily focusing on English speaking and listening skills to help you improve and enjoy your learning journey. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you just need an adventure? Not like a scaling Mount Everest adventure, but something smaller, something manageable, but still exciting? Well, that's exactly how I felt a few weeks ago. And that, my friend, is how I ended up on a city bike tour. Now, let me preface this by saying, I haven't ridden a bike, well, since I was probably 12. I mean, I know how to ride a bike, it's like ingrained in your muscle memory, right? But the thought of navigating city traffic on two wheels? It was slightly terrifying, if I'm honest. But I'd seen this tour advertised, Hidden Gems of the City. It was called, and it promised quirky alleyways, charming cafes, and local stories you wouldn't find in any guidebook. It called to me. So, despite my reservations, I signed up. The morning of the tour dawned bright and sunny. A little too sunny, if you ask me. I'm more of a cloudy with a chance of books kind of person. But hey, adventure, right? I arrived at the meeting point, a small, bustling square overflowing with flower stalls, and instantly spotted the group. A motley crew of all ages and nationalities, all nervously eyeing the row of shiny, bright blue bikes lined up against the wall. I'll admit, my heart did a little flutter kick. These weren't your grandma's clunky beach cruisers, oh no. These were sleek, modern city bikes. All gears and things. You know? The kind that look like they require a degree in engineering to operate. The tour guide, a bubbly woman named Beatrice with a voice that could charm the birds out of the trees, introduced herself and launched into a safety briefing. Honestly, I listened with about half an ear. Partly because I was trying to discreetly figure out how the gears worked, and partly because I was utterly captivated by the vibrant life swirling around us. The flower sellers calling out their wares in sing-song voices, the clang of a distant tram, the smell of fresh pastries wafting from a nearby bakery. It was sensory overload in the best possible way. We were each assigned a bike, and I cautiously approached mine, feeling like I was meeting a slightly intimidating but potentially very cool new acquaintance. I gingerly swung my leg over the crossbar, a maneuver which, thankfully, I managed without incident. Small victories, right? And wobbled a bit, getting a feel for the weight and balance. Beatrice, sensing my apprehension, gave me a reassuring smile and a quick refresher on hand signals. Just like riding a bike, she said, winking. Easy for her to say. Then, we were off. The first few minutes were, well, let's just say I was less graceful cyclist, and more slightly panicked penguin on wheels. My steering was erratic, I nearly took out a small dog, so sorry, little fella, and I think I stalled the bike at least twice. But slowly, miraculously, it started to come back to me. The rhythm of pedaling, the gentle sway of the bike, the wind in my hair, it was actually kinda fun. We weaved through narrow cobblestone streets, past ancient churches and colorful murals, places I'd never even known existed despite living in the city for years. Beatrice, with her seemingly endless supply of anecdotes and historical tidbits, brought each place to life. She pointed out hidden courtyards tucked away behind unassuming doorways, told us the stories behind quirky statues, and even introduced us to the owner of a tiny, family-run gelato shop. Best gelato I've ever had, by the way. And the alleyways. Oh, the alleyways. Narrow, winding passages, dripping with ivy and bursting with unexpected bursts of color. Street art splashed across brick walls, tiny cafes overflowing with locals, the tantalizing aroma of spices. Hanging in the air, it was like stepping into another world. A secret world, hidden in plain sight. There were a few hiccups, of course. At one point, I misjudged a turn and ended up veering wildly onto the pavement, narrowly missing a lamppost, and, another small dog. I seem to have a thing with small dogs and near misses. Note to self. Work on steering. My face burned with embarrassment, but Beatrice, ever the unflappable tour guide, simply chuckled and said, "It happens to the best of us." Which, I suspect, was a polite lie, but it made me feel better nonetheless. Then there was the incident with the cobblestones. Let's just say they are not the most bike-friendly surface. My front wheel hit a particularly nasty bump, sending a jolt up my arms and making me lose my grip on the handlebars for a split second. I let out a little yelp, convinced I was about to go flying over the handlebars, but somehow, miraculously, I managed to regain control. My heart hammered in my chest, but I was still upright. Another small victory. But you know what the best part was? The people. The other people on the tour. At first, we were just a collection of strangers, awkwardly united by our shared fear of falling off our bikes. But as the tour progressed, we started to chat, to share stories, to laugh at each other's wobbly moments. We became a little team, encouraging each other, offering words of support, and sometimes, much needed directions. By the time the tour ended, back in the bustling square where we had started, I felt different, exhilarated, a little bit achy, and surprisingly, quite emotional. I had faced my fears, explored hidden corners of my own city, and connected with a group of complete strangers in a way I never would have expected. We lingered for a while, exchanging contact details and promising to stay in touch, promises I fully intend to keep, by the way. As I walked away, the late afternoon sun warming my face, the sounds of the city buzzing around me, I realized something. It wasn't just about the bikes, or the hidden alleyways, or even the gelato, although, let's be honest, the gelato was a definite highlight. It was about the experience. The feeling of freedom, of discovery, of connection. It was about pushing myself outside my comfort zone and discovering a whole new side to my city, and, maybe, even a little bit of a new side to myself. So, yeah, the day I went on a city bike tour. It wasn't exactly what I expected. It was better. It was an adventure. A small adventure, maybe. But sometimes, those are the best kind, you know? The ones that remind you to embrace the unexpected, to find joy in the little things, and to never be afraid to try something new, even if it involves potentially embarrassing yourself in front of a group of strangers and a couple of unsuspecting small dogs. Because who knows? You might just discover something amazing. Okay, so grab a cup of tea, settle in, because I have a story for you. It's not some grand adventure, no epic tale of daring do, but it's my story, and it's about a shortcut key. I know, sounds thrilling, right? But trust me, this one changed my life. Well, maybe not my whole life, but definitely my work life. And sometimes, isn't that basically the same thing? Just kidding, mostly. So, picture this. It's a Tuesday. Bleak, drizzly Tuesday. You know the kind, the sky is this depressing shade of gray, the kind of gray that makes you crave carbs and contemplate the meaning of existence. The air smells of damp earth and that slightly burnt coffee smell that perpetually lingers in our office kitchen. I'm hunched over my laptop, buried under a mountain of spreadsheets. Seriously, Mount Everest had nothing on this pile of numbers. And my boss, bless her heart, she'd given me this massive project, due Thursday. Thursday. It was already Tuesday afternoon. I felt that familiar knot of panic tightening in my chest. Each cell on the screen seemed to mock me. I was manually entering data, line by line, number by number. Click, type, click, type. The rhythmic clicking of the mouse was the soundtrack to my impending doom. My fingers were starting to cramp, my eyes were blurring, and I swear I could smell the faint scent of burning plastic. Probably my brain slowly melting from the sheer monotony of it all. You ever feel like that? Like your brain is just oozing out your ears? My colleagues around me were tapping away furiously, their keyboards clicking like a symphony of productivity. Everyone seemed so efficient. Me? I felt like I was swimming in treacle. Slow, sticky, and utterly overwhelmed. I sighed, a long, dramatic sigh that probably annoyed everyone within a 5-meter radius. But I couldn't help it. I was drowning in data. And then, it happened. Sarah, the office whiz kid, the one who always seemed to be 3 steps ahead of everyone else, walked past my desk. She glanced at my screen, her eyebrows raised in a silent question. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. I mumbled something about deadlines and data entry, gesturing helplessly at the screen. She chuckled, not a mean chuckle, more of a sympathetic one, and leaned closer. "Honey," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "why are you doing it manually? Just use Control+D. Control+D, 4 simple words. 4 magical words. 4 life-altering words." I stared at her blankly. Control-D? I repeated, like a parrot learning a new phrase. She nodded, a smile playing on her lips. "Yeah, it copies the contents of the cell above. Saves you, like, 1,000,000 hours." She demonstrated, her fingers dancing across the keyboard with effortless grace. Whoosh! A whole row of data populated in a blink of an eye. Magic. Pure, unadulterated spreadsheet magic. My jaw dropped. I felt a rush of, I don't know, exhilaration? Relief? Disbelief? It was a cocktail of emotions I couldn't quite process. I had spent hours, painstakingly entering data that could have been copied with a simple keystroke. I wanted to laugh, cry, and hug Sarah all at the same time. "You're kidding," I breathed, feeling slightly foolish. "I've been doing this manually for how long?" I trailed off, the enormity of my wasted time sinking in. Sarah just grinned. "Don't worry," she said, patting my shoulder reassuringly. "We've all been there. It's the little things, right?" And boy, was she right. It was the little things. That tiny shortcut, that seemingly insignificant combination of keys, it was a revelation. It was like someone had handed me the key to the kingdom of spreadsheet efficiency. I felt a surge of power, a sense of control I hadn't felt all day. The rest of the afternoon flew by. With the help of my newfound magical shortcut, I zipped through the remaining data. The clicking of the mouse was replaced by the satisfying tap-tap-tap of the keyboard. The mountain of spreadsheets shrank before my eyes. I felt like a superhero, a data entry ninja, a spreadsheet sorceress. Okay, maybe I got a little carried away, but honestly, the relief was immense. I finished the project by Wednesday evening, a full day ahead of schedule. I even had time to go home, make a decent dinner, and actually sleep before the deadline. Do you know how rare that is? It was glorious. The next day, I walked into the office with a spring in my step. The smell of fresh coffee no longer a reminder of impending doom but a promise of a productive day. I even hummed a little tune as I logged onto my computer. My boss was thrilled, praising my efficiency and even hinting at a possible bonus. All thanks to Control+D. Now, I know it sounds silly. A shortcut key. Big deal, right? But it was more than just a shortcut. It was a lesson. A lesson in the power of asking for help, in the importance of staying open to new things, and in the sheer joy of discovering those little hidden efficiencies that can make a world of difference. It's funny, isn't it? How something so small can have such a big impact. It's a reminder that even in the most mundane tasks, there's always something new to learn, something to discover. And sometimes, the smallest discoveries can be the most rewarding. So, yeah, that's my story about the day I learned a new shortcut key. It may not be epic, but it's mine. And now, whenever I see those two little keys, I smile. Because they represent more than just a shortcut. They represent a moment of realization, a sense of accomplishment, and a reminder that even in a world of endless data and looming deadlines, there's always room for a little magic. So, tell me, what about you? Any life-changing shortcut stories? I'd love to hear them. Hey everyone. Learning a new language can feel like climbing a mountain, but remember, the only approval you need is your own. Think about that for a second. It's your journey, your pace, your victory. Don't let anyone else's timeline or expectations dim your shine. You're doing amazing, and each small step forward is something to celebrate. Believe in yourself, because that's the most powerful fuel for your language engine. And you know what? Here's a fun little trick to boost your speaking practice. Narrate what your future self would tell you. Imagine your fluent, confident future self giving you advice, encouragement, or even just describing your day. You can do this while cooking dinner, walking to work, or even just brushing your teeth. It's a super easy way to get comfortable with forming sentences and expressing yourself without the pressure of an actual conversation. Honestly, it feels like magic when you start internalizing that future confidence. Do you also find yourself feeling proud when you recognize a word in a movie? It's such a small thing, but it feels like winning a mini lottery, right? It's a little reminder of how far you've come. Hearing those familiar words jump out at you from a song or a podcast, it's like those little sparks of joy that fuel you to keep going. These small victories are the building blocks of fluency. You will not believe what happened next. I was chatting with a friend the other day about travel, and it got me thinking. We all have those dream destinations, those places that just call to us. And imagine experiencing those places while also practicing your English. It opens up a whole new world of connection and adventure. So, tell me, what's your dream destination to visit for practicing English? I'd love to hear all about it in the comments. Okay, so, picture this. It's 2007. I know, ancient history, right? Flip phones were still cool, and GPS devices, well, they were these magical little boxes that promised to guide you anywhere, but, honestly, they felt more like a portal to frustration. At least I felt that way. I was much happier with my trusty, well-worn road atlas, even if it meant unfolding a map the size of a small table in the car. I was notoriously directionally challenged, or as my sister lovingly put it, geographically impaired. Getting lost was practically my hobby. So, my family, bless their hearts, chipped in and got me a GPS for my birthday. They presented it to me with these big, hopeful smiles, like they'd just handed me the key to the universe. No more getting lost. They cheered. I, on the other hand, looked at it like it was some kind of alien artifact. Buttons, a tiny screen, a robotic voice, it was intimidating, to say the least. The first few weeks, it just sat there, in its box, on my passenger seat. I'd glance at it every now and then, you know, sizing it up. Like, are you going to be friend or foe? My paper maps were still my go-to. But then came the day. The day I had to use it. I was driving to a wedding, a big one, out in the countryside. Somewhere I'd never been before. It was a gorgeous fall day, the leaves were all fiery reds and oranges, that crisp autumn air, you know the kind. Sun shining, perfect driving weather, and I was, utterly, hopelessly lost. I'd taken a wrong turn somewhere, miles back, and my paper map, bless its paper heart, just wasn't helping. I was driving down these narrow country lanes, surrounded by fields of, well, I don't even know what they were fields of. Just endless stretches of green and gold. No signs, no houses, just me, my increasingly frantic thoughts, and that little box on the passenger seat, silently judging me. So, I pulled over. Defeated. The sun was starting to dip lower in the sky, and a little shiver of panic went down my spine. Okay, I mumbled, okay, it's you or nothing. I pulled the GPS out of its box. It felt oddly cold and smooth in my hands. I plugged it into the cigarette lighter, remember those? And waited. The screen flickered to life. It showed a little car icon, blinking. Blinking at me. Right, I muttered. Where do I even? The instruction manual was, of course, safely tucked away in the glove compartment, completely useless at that moment. I started pressing buttons, randomly, hoping for a miracle. I think I even accidentally changed the language to German at one point. Can you imagine? Lost in the countryside, with a GPS yelling directions at me in a language I didn't understand. It's comical now, looking back, but at the time, I was close to tears. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I managed to input the address. A robotic voice, a woman's voice, calm and collected, announced, in 200 feet, turn left. I looked around. 200 feet? Left onto what? There wasn't a road, just a field. I was convinced the thing was broken. I mean, turn left into a field? Who designed this thing? But almost against my better judgment, I drove on a little further. And then, there it was. A tiny, almost hidden, dirt road, barely wider than my car. I wouldn't have seen it if I hadn't been looking for it. I cautiously turned onto the dirt road, the car bumping along, and the GPS lady spoke again, in 500 feet, turn right. Another hidden road. This one was slightly less terrifying. And so it went. A series of twists and turns, through what felt like the middle of nowhere, guided by that calm, robotic voice. The sun was setting, painting the sky in these unbelievable shades of pink and orange. The landscape was breathtaking. I was driving through rolling hills, past old farmhouses and babbling brooks. It was beautiful. And I wouldn't have seen any of it if I hadn't been so spectacularly lost, and forced to rely on that little box. The GPS finally led me onto a paved road, and I saw a sign. A sign pointing towards the wedding venue. Relief washed over me, so intense it was almost dizzying. I wanted to laugh, cry, and hug that little GPS all at the same time. I arrived at the wedding a little late, a little dusty from the dirt roads, but I'd made it. I parked the car, took a deep breath of that cool evening air, and just smiled. I'd conquered the GPS. Or maybe, just maybe, it had conquered me. It's funny, isn't it? How something that seemed so intimidating, so frustrating, could end up being so helpful. I mean, I still love maps, don't get me wrong. The feel of the paper, the way they unfold, there's a romance to it. But that day I learned to use a GPS, it was more than just learning to use a gadget. It was about letting go of my fear, about trusting something new, and about discovering the unexpected beauty that can be found when you take a wrong turn, or in my case, a lot of wrong turns. You know, I think about that day sometimes, especially when I'm feeling overwhelmed by technology, by all the new gadgets and gizmos that seem to come out every other day. It reminds me that sometimes, the things that scare us the most can also be the things that open us up to new experiences, new perspectives. It's about finding the balance, isn't it? Embracing the new while still holding on to the things we love. And who knows, maybe getting lost every now and then isn't so bad after all. It's in those moments of uncertainty, of being a little bit lost, that we often find the most unexpected and beautiful things. Just like that beautiful countryside, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, a place I never would have seen if it weren't for that little, magical, slightly bossy box on my dashboard. So yeah, the day I learned to use a GPS, it was a day of frustration, a day of discovery, and, honestly, a day I'll never forget. So, you want to hear about my bread baking saga? Buckle up, Buttercup, because it's a wild ride. It all started, I guess you could say, with a sourdough starter named Ferdinand. Yes, I named him. Don't judge. See, I'd always been intimidated by bread. All that kneading, proving, the mysterious alchemy of yeast, it seemed like something reserved for grandmothers with magic in their fingertips, not a clumsy millennial like myself. But then, lockdown happened. Suddenly, everyone and their dog was baking sourdough, posting pictures of these gorgeous, golden loaves online. I was scrolling through Instagram, feeling the pangs of inadequacy and hunger, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to conquer this beast. So, Ferdinand was born. He wasn't much to look at in the beginning, just a gloopy mixture of flour and water in a mason jar. But I nurtured him like a baby bird, feeding him flour and water every day, whispering encouragement, don't tell anyone. The first few days, nothing. Just a sad, still sludge. I started to doubt myself. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe Ferdinand was a dud. I'd even peek into his jar at night, half expecting to find him curled up in a little floury ball, defeated. But then, on day 5, bubbles. Tiny, glorious bubbles. He was alive. I swear I did a little happy dance in the kitchen. It was such a small thing, but it felt like a monumental victory. You know, like I'd single-handedly discovered a new planet or something. Okay, maybe I'm being dramatic, but I was genuinely thrilled. I mean, this gloopy mess was actually fermenting. It was alive. I felt this weird sense of responsibility, like I had this tiny, bubbly life in my hands. Then came the real challenge, baking the actual bread. I found this recipe online that looked complicated. It had things like autolyse, and bulk fermentation, and levain. I had no idea what any of it meant. I mean, honestly, levain. What even is a levain? It sounded like something you'd find in a medieval apothecary, not my kitchen. So, I did what any self-respecting millennial would do. I Googled it. Turns out, levain is just a fancy word for sourdough starter. Go figure. Armed with this newfound knowledge, and a hefty dose of anxiety, I embarked on my baking journey. The first attempt, well, let's just say it wasn't pretty. The dough was sticky, unruly, refusing to cooperate. It clung to my hands, the counter, my clothes. It was like wrestling a tiny, flour-covered octopus. I followed the instructions meticulously, measuring everything to the gram, obsessively checking the temperature of the water. But something went wrong. The dough just wouldn't rise. It sat there, stubbornly flat, mocking my efforts. The resulting loaf was dense, hard, and about as appealing as a brick. I could have used it as a doorstop. I was so disheartened. I wanted to throw Ferdinand, and the brick loaf, out the window. But then, I remembered something my grandmother used to say, cooking is like life. You don't always get it right the first time. The important thing is to keep trying. So, I took a deep breath, scraped the dough off my hands, and resolved to try again. The second attempt was marginally better. The dough was still sticky, but I managed to get it to rise, sort of. The loaf wasn't quite as dense, but it was still far from the Instagram-worthy masterpieces I'd been drooling over. And the third? Well, the third was a disaster. I forgot to add salt. How do you forget to add salt? It's like the most basic ingredient. The resulting loaf was, predictably, bland and disappointing. I felt like a complete failure. But, stubbornly, I persisted. I watched countless YouTube videos, read articles, joined online bread baking forums. I became obsessed. I started to understand the science behind the process, the delicate balance of ingredients, the importance of patience. Slowly, ever so slowly, I started to get better. One day, something magical happened. I pulled a loaf out of the oven, and it was perfect. Golden brown crust, soft, airy interior, a tangy sourdough aroma that filled the entire apartment. I swear, I almost cried. It was beautiful. It was delicious. It was mine. That moment, holding that warm loaf in my hands, was more satisfying than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just about the bread. It was about the journey, the struggle, the perseverance. It was about learning to embrace the mistakes, the imperfections, the messy, sticky chaos of it all. And you know what the best part was? Sharing it. I sliced that loaf up, slathered it with butter, and shared it with my friends and family. Their reactions, their smiles, the way their eyes lit up with each bite, that's what made it all worth it. These days, Ferdinand is a thriving member of our household. He sits proudly on the counter, bubbling away happily. And while my loaves might not always be Instagram perfect, they're always made with love, and they always taste like victory. So, what's the moral of the story? I guess it's that even the most intimidating things can be conquered with a little patience, perseverance, and a healthy dose of obsession. And who knows, maybe you'll even discover a newfound love for baking, and a strangely affectionate feeling for a jar of gloopy, bubbly starter. You never know. Now, want a slice? I just baked a fresh loaf this morning. Hey everyone. Learning a new language can feel like a huge mountain to climb, but remember this. Language is music, practice your tune. Think about it. Every language has its own rhythm, its own melody. Just like learning a new song, it takes practice, but with each repetition, you become more fluent, more confident, and more in tune with the beautiful music of English. It's not about perfection, it's about enjoying the process of finding your voice. And you know what? Here's a fun little trick to practice speaking every single day, giving advice to your younger self aloud. Imagine you could go back in time and chat with your younger self. What wisdom would you share? Maybe you'd tell yourself to be braver, to take more chances, or perhaps just to relax and enjoy the ride. Doing this while you're cooking dinner or taking a walk can make practice feel less like work and more like a friendly conversation. It's surprisingly therapeutic too. Trying to imitate expressions and gestures naturally? I totally get it. Sometimes, it feels like you're watching a movie, understanding every word, but then when it's your turn to speak, it's like the subtitles disappear. You might feel a little awkward, trying to figure out how to move your hands or what facial expression fits the situation. Honestly, it's all part of the process, and it's something we all experience. Don't be too hard on yourself, embrace the learning curve. You will not believe what happened next. Just the other day, I was ordering coffee, and the barista complimented my English. It felt like magic. It made me think about how much learning this language has impacted my life, and it made me curious about your experiences too. How has learning English changed your daily routine? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you just have one of those days? The kind where everything feels heavy? Like the air itself is made of wool. Well, this particular day, it was my grandma's birthday. And, well, things weren't great. She was fading, you know? Like a beautiful old photograph, slowly losing its vibrancy. We all knew this birthday might be her last. It hung in the air unspoken, a sad, shimmering bubble. And I wanted to do something special. Something real. Something more than just another store-bought card with generic, flowery sentiments that felt hollow. Empty. Like they were mocking the enormity of what we were all feeling. So, I decided to make her a card. Handmade. From scratch. Now, mind you, I'm about as artistic as a potato. Seriously. Stick figures are my masterpiece. But I had this urge, this deep-seated need to pour my love onto paper, even if it ended up looking like a 5-year-old's art project. I remember the light in my room that day. A pale, watery sunlight filtering through the window, casting long, melancholy shadows. It was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring. I could hear the faint tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the hallway, each tick a tiny hammer blow against the fragile shell of the day. I gathered my supplies. A piece of thick, creamy cardstock, almost like watercolor paper. It felt substantial, hopeful. A few tubes of acrylic paint, mostly primary colors, a vibrant, defiant splash against the gray backdrop of my mood. Some colored pencils, their tips worn down to nubs from years of neglect. A glue stick that had seen better days, its cap chewed on, a testament to past anxieties. And glitter. Because, well, what's a handmade card without a little sparkle? Even if the sparkle felt a little forced, a little desperate in the face of such, everything. I sat at my desk, the wood cool and smooth beneath my fingertips. And I just stared at that blank piece of cardstock. It felt daunting, like a vast, empty canvas mocking my lack of skill. Where do I even begin? What do I say? How do I capture a lifetime of love and memories on a single piece of paper? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and thought about Grandma. Her warm smile, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she laughed, the smell of her baking, a comforting mix of cinnamon, vanilla, and something indefinably her. The feel of her hand in mine, papery and thin, yet surprisingly strong. And then, slowly, hesitantly, I started to sketch. A simple outline of a heart. Clumsy, uneven, but real. My heart poured onto paper. I filled the heart with layers of color. Not just red, but shades of pink and orange and even a little purple. Because love isn't just one thing, is it? It's a kaleidoscope of emotions, a messy, vibrant tapestry woven from shared moments and whispered secrets. I added details. Tiny, imperfect flowers, their petals dotted with clumsy glitter. A wobbly, lopsided sun shining down, because even on the darkest days, there's always a sliver of light, isn't there? A tiny, almost invisible ladybug, because Grandma always said they brought good luck. And then, the words. Oh, the words. They felt inadequate. How could I possibly distill all the love, all the gratitude, all the aching sadness into a few sentences? I wrote and rewrote, crossing out words, smudging the ink with my frustrated tears. The paper started to buckle under the weight of my emotions, a tangible representation of the pressure in my chest. Finally, I settled on something simple. Happy birthday, Grandma. I love you more than words can say. It wasn't much, but it was true. And sometimes, the simplest words are the most powerful, right? I remember looking at the finished card. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, smudged, and a little childish. But it was mine. Made with love, infused with every ounce of emotion I possessed. And in that moment, it was enough. Guess what happened next? I went to the hospital, my heart pounding a nervous rhythm against my ribs. The room smelled sterile, antiseptic, a stark contrast to the warm, comforting scent of Grandma's house. The rhythmic beep of the machines, the hushed whispers of the nurses, it all felt surreal. Like a dream I couldn't wake up from. I gave her the card. Her hands, so frail, so delicate, traced the outline of the heart. A faint smile touched her lips. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. Her eyes, though clouded with age and illness, held a depth of love that spoke volumes. She kept that card by her bedside until the end. And you know what? That messy, imperfect, handmade card, it meant more to her than any expensive gift ever could. Because it wasn't about the artistry, it was about the love. The raw, unfiltered, messy love poured onto a piece of paper. And sometimes, that's all that matters, isn't it? The messy, imperfect, realness of it all. Because in the face of loss, in the face of grief, it's the little things, the handmade things, the things infused with love, that hold us together. They're the tiny anchors that keep us from drifting away in the vast, overwhelming ocean of sorrow. They're the whispers of hope in the deafening silence of grief. They're the reminders that even in the darkest of times, love endures. And that, my friend, is a story worth telling. So, you won't believe what happened the other day. I decided, quite spontaneously, to visit our local history museum. You know, the one on Elm Street? I'd driven past it a million times, always meaning to pop in, but life, as it does, just happened. Anyway, I had a free afternoon, the sun was shining. A perfect autumn day, really, and I thought, today's the day. I parked the car, and even walking up the path was an experience. The leaves were that gorgeous golden red color, crunching delightfully under my feet. The air smelled like damp earth and wood smoke, so nostalgic, don't you think? The museum itself is this charming old building, all brick and ivy, like something out of a storybook. I remember thinking, this place has stories to tell. I stepped inside, and immediately, the atmosphere shifted. It was quiet, hushed, a little chilly, even. The air smelled faintly of old paper and dust, that distinct museum smell, right? You know the one. The entrance hall had these beautiful stained glass windows depicting scenes from the town's founding. The light filtering through cast these jewel-toned patterns on the polished wooden floor, absolutely stunning. I just stood there for a moment, soaking it all in. The woman at the reception desk was lovely, so welcoming. She gave me a little map and pointed out some of the highlights. "Don't miss the Victorian-era exhibit," she said with a smile. "It's a visitor favorite." And let me tell you, she wasn't wrong. I started with the earliest history, the indigenous peoples who lived here centuries ago. There were arrowheads, pottery shards, intricate beadwork. It was incredible to see these tangible links to the past. I tried to imagine what life must have been like for them, living off the land, navigating by the stars. It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? Then I wandered through the Pioneer Days exhibit. There were old farming tools, letters written by settlers, even a replica of a sod house. Can you imagine? Living in a house made of dirt? It was humbling to see the hardships they endured, the resilience they showed. And the Victorian-era exhibit? Oh, it was a feast for the eyes. Lavish gowns, ornate furniture, delicate porcelain dolls. It was like stepping back in time. I spent ages just gazing at the intricate details, the craftsmanship. There was this one dress, a deep emerald green velvet, with tiny seed pearls sewn into the bodice. It was breathtaking. I even tried on a bonnet in front of a mirror, just for fun. I probably looked ridiculous, but hey, no one was judging. One of the most unexpected discoveries was a small, dimly lit room dedicated to the town's involvement in the Civil War. There were photographs of soldiers, letters they'd written home, even a tattered flag. Reading those letters, imagining those young men going off to fight, knowing they might never return, it was incredibly moving. There was this one letter, written by a young soldier to his mother, just days before a major battle. He talked about how much he missed her apple pie, how he hoped to be home soon. It just broke my heart. I stood there for a long time, lost in thought, trying to grasp the weight of history contained within those walls. I often think we rush through life, so focused on the present, the future, that we forget to look back. But the past is there, woven into the fabric of who we are, and places like this museum, they remind us of that. They help us connect with the people who came before us, to understand their struggles, their triumphs. The museum also had a section on local legends and folklore. Some were spooky, some were funny, and some, well, let's just say I took them with a grain of salt. There was one story about a mischievous ghost that supposedly haunted the old mill. I have to admit, I got a little creeped out walking past the mill on my way home. But my favorite part of the museum, hands down, was the interactive exhibit on the town's history of innovation. They had these old inventions, contraptions I'd never seen before, a butter churn, a hand-cranked washing machine, a telegraph machine. I even got to try my hand at typesetting on an antique printing press. It was so much fun, and it made me appreciate how far we've come technologically. I mean, can you imagine washing clothes by hand? Or having to send a telegram every time you wanted to communicate with someone far away? As I was leaving, I noticed a small display case tucked away in a corner. It contained a collection of old photographs of the town's annual summer picnic. And guess what? I spotted a picture of my grandmother. She was just a little girl, grinning from ear to ear, holding a cotton candy. It was such a sweet, unexpected moment. It felt like a little wink from the past, a reminder that I'm part of this story too. Walking out of the museum, I felt different. Inspired, I guess. And connected. Connected to the past, to my community, to something bigger than myself. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in these vibrant hues of orange and pink. The air was crisp and cool. And as I walked back to my car, crunching those autumn leaves under my feet, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the stories I'd heard, the lessons I'd learned, the connection I'd felt. It was more than just a visit to a museum, it was a journey through time. So, yeah, that was my afternoon at the local history museum. It might sound a little cheesy, I know, but it truly was a special experience. It reminded me of the importance of remembering, of learning from the past, and of appreciating the present. You know what I mean? You should go sometime. Seriously, you won't regret it. Who knows what treasures you might uncover? Maybe even a picture of your own grandmother, grinning at you from the past. Well, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for watching and spending this time with me. I really appreciate you staying connected and learning together. If you'd like to keep up with our daily English speaking and listening practice, I'd love for you to follow, like, subscribe, and share these videos. You know, before we go, it made me wonder, is there a skill you've been meaning to practice next weekend? It is always so lovely to hear what everyone is thinking about, and sharing your plans in the comments is a wonderful way to practice expressing yourself in English and connect with others who have similar interests. See you tomorrow, and remember to take good care of yourselves and keep practicing. Your consistency is key.